As I mentioned earlier, that power feed is what controls my electronic running board you see down there. So when I open my door, they come on. So that power is also got from that little front feed. And if you haven't seen that video, make sure you scroll back up a few weeks because that's a cool one to check out also. Okay, so now I'm left with 3 little different wires. I got that one over there, that one right there above my head, and this one back here. I'm gonna slide the little velvet, that little suede piece back over on top of this. But that's gonna connect to these 3 wires in those 3 different spots. So I finagled this cover back into the back seat and up on top of the seats, ready to push up. All right, so I will have to get this up close enough to stick first, so I might actually even like recline these front seats back to where I can set it on there, so we'll hold it close enough. But then these just stick with Velcro. So if you see here, all these different spots, there's corresponding little Velcro here on the ceiling everywhere, so they should just stick right on once I get the wire snapped into place. So that's exactly what I did. I went ahead and moved these seats to better help me. I did this several times throughout the process with both the cover and the actual frame. Moved the seats into position where they acted as kind of another hand for me. Then I just plugged in each of these 3 wires individually, which was no problem. All right, so now I went to try to Velcro this little top on, and I was having trouble getting it to click into place, and then I realized why I couldn't get it. I just ran this wire off the top down into here, but not realizing when this comes out, it's gonna be a track right here. So I need to fish this back behind here and pull it in this way and then plug it back into the little harness here. And with those now tucked around the outside of the frame, it all snapped together really well. Then it was a matter of just pushing this little cover back up, all the little Velcro sticking on each individual spots. All right, so let me give you a quick review of everything from the install and the early on functioning, at least how I see it. As far as the install, it's actually very simple. Very similar to sunshades I put on other vehicles, including my Model Y Juniper I did a few weeks ago. I did this install entirely by myself, and it took about an hour and 30 minutes, but that includes me trying to record as I was doing with one hand, holding my camera with the other. It should have taken me probably closer to an hour. Now, if you don't have this kind of experience, and you're not handy with working on vehicles and things like this, I could see this taking you upwards of 2 hours, especially if you're not familiar with taking apart that whole front area. But it's all very manageable, and no one step is really complicated. I'll mention a couple of the downsides before we get to the many positives. So this is going to lower the ceiling, especially right here in the middle, by about 3.5 to 4 inches. Now, that being said, even the ad online will say that a person that's 6'2" or 6'3" or more still won't have a problem. So I'm 5'9", 5'10". You can see I still have plenty of inches of clearance, but also my seat's probably a little bit higher than what you would normally want. So I could probably drop my seat another inch or so and make a little bit more room. But if you are a big guy, or if you have big passengers on a regular basis, I'm talking like 6'5", 6'7", or bigger, I could see potentially you rubbing here. But if that's not you or anyone you ride with, then that's really a non-factor to me. Another potential downside, as you saw, as you'll see again here, is this whole top shell sticks to the little frame with Velcro. Now, that's a plus to make the install simpler, but it's a downside as it's just hanging by Velcro. Now, like everything I do, I'll update this. Give me a month or 2, or maybe less if I find out it goes bad, and I'll update you on how well this stays and how the functions all continue to work. But as I see it right now, it does hold pretty strong, but I'm cautiously optimistic to see if it's going to continue to do that. One reason I chose to buy this specific sunshade, or at least I was waiting out for it, is I had a sunshade previously on my old Model Y. It was a 2020, and I did have a button up in the front, as this one does up here, which was nice, but my passengers couldn't control that. So if somebody back here wanted to control the shade, because especially in this vehicle here, this would be more affecting the passenger, they wouldn't have access. This particular sunshade, in addition to having that up there, in addition to having the voice command, which I'll get to in a second, also has buttons here on the passenger side and also over there on the driver's side. So it has 3 different sets of buttons. So another cool thing about this, it does have like the auto open, just like your windows have. Now, if you touch and hold this just for a couple spurts, for example, you're going to see it's going to move as I hold it. But if you want it to completely shut or completely open, if you just tap that button either way, a single one press, it'll just take off and it'll auto shut. Any direction will stop it. Again, if I hold it, it's going to move forward. But if I just single touch, it's going to take off and open all the way in like the auto position. Another potential downside is the same downside I mentioned earlier, is you are dropping a little bit lower. Now here above my head, it's not as low as what this little bump out right here was, but you'll notice it is probably about 1.75 inches, under 2 inches, but a significant little gap closer to my head. Again, I'm 5'9", 5'10" adult. I have a hat on, and I now only have maybe 1 inch or 2 of clearance. So if you have a passenger in the back seat that's maybe 6'2" or taller, then there's a chance they're going to rub their head on this. Now, the benefit I have right here is I can always move the sunshade out of the way and get that 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches back if I had a taller passenger. and I can even stop the shade in the middle and still present some sun and still give myself the maximum height. So again, a potential negative, but ultimately you can mitigate it. Another potential downside is all the installation that goes with this. Now, I would have liked, into a perfect world, for this to all have gone together without pulling this out. But I've learned from other things, like that S92 camera I have, that it draws sometimes maybe too much internal power and you have problems. So my guess is some of these suppliers have potentially learned from that and now made it to where we draw the power here from this power feed, where there's all kinds of excess power, and it's no longer an issue of maxing out that power inside the truck. But it is still nonetheless a little bit of a drag. But as hopefully you saw in this video, it's not as bad as it looks like. And it's certainly something you can handle, especially if you have a friend give you a hand. And then the last little feature I want to point out is the voice activation. This is not as useful as maybe what it sounds like. It's more of like a party trick. But that being said, I will use the fire out of this thing every time I have somebody in my car for the next couple of months. So this is actually very similar to my 2020 Model Y, that you activate it by using the word TT. For example, you'd say, "Hello, TT. I am here." And then it responds by saying, "I am here," which you just heard, although in a Chinese accent, which is kind of cool. So here's one more example. You open the Sunshade. There it goes. After that little pause, it opens up. It'll do several different commands like open and shut, but nonetheless, it's a pretty cool little thing to have. Looking cool while staying cool. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.